guys, it's Christine, also known as Ivy Winter. Thank you for joining me for another Disney video. Today's video is actually spawned from a question that I just got last week from user AsterX, who asked me about tipping in Disney World. He is not from the US, he's from the UK, and so in general was confused about tipping here because we do things really differently than other countries. But it gets even more confusing because Disney does things even more differently because they do have some restrictions on who can and who cannot take tips. In general, if you're not from the US and you come here, you probably think that we tip for everything, and that's kind of because we do. It's kind of in our culture to always tip service industry employees. So bartenders, waiters, delivery people, there's a whole slew of different kinds of people that we tip. And I find that people typically tip the same amount regardless of the kind of service that they get. Because I think there's just a cultural stigma of like having to at least tip 15 or 20% because that's just what you do. And part of that comes from the fact that a lot of these service employees don't actually get really great hourly wages. And so a big chunk of what they make actually comes from tips. So knowing that, I think Americans try to always tip because we're trying to basically, you know, help these people out and make sure that they're making a living wage. But it does become a bit of an argument of, you know, a lot of people will just tip no matter what, even if they had okay or poor service. And so I think that can be a little confusing for somebody who is from another country, because I think we are a very tip-happy country, whereas in some countries it's like frowned upon or like an insult if you give money to someone, and then in other countries it's somewhere in the middle and it really is about how good your service actually was. So that alone I can see being very confusing for somebody. Then you go down to Disney World and, well, they have a little bit of a different rule with tipping because they only allow it for certain select roles. And other roles, other cast member roles, are told not to accept tips. I know this because maybe you guys have seen this video, it's pretty old now, but I had a video where I talked about how I used to be a cast member at the World of Disney on 5th Avenue. And we were considered part of the parks, and so we had to abide by the same rules. And often we had people who tried to tip us for a variety of reasons. Maybe I helped somebody with, you know, picking out something for their daughter's birthday and guided them through the store and took the time to do that, and they wanted to give me a tip. I had a fellow cast member who offered to carry some bags out the store down 5th Avenue to a car that they had, and they wanted to tip them. And we were told to refuse because we were just merchandise cast members. We were not service cast members, so we were not allowed to accept the tip. The rule then, which I think is similarly a rule now, but any current cast members, please correct me if I'm wrong because I'm going back to like 2009 right now, so I don't know what's changed since then. But the rule was that we had to refuse 3 times, and if at the 3rd time they still, or I guess technically the 4th time, they still insisted to give us a tip, we would take it, but then we were supposed to give it to our manager and it would get donated to a charity. So we weren't allowed to actually keep it. Again, I don't know if there's still the rules, if maybe it's like by manager and some of them let you keep it. I would love to know actually in the comments below if there's any cast members watching this that can update me on that, but that was just the rule that we had. So no, 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 okay, and then it would end up going to charity. We weren't allowed to keep it. That said, there are some cases in Disney World where you can tip and you should tip. So I think the first and most obvious is table service restaurants. Just like any other restaurant, you should tip your waiter or waitress. That's just part of, again, our American, you know, culture, but that is something that should be done. They can accept it, so you can tip whoever has been serving on you for your meal. How much that is, I mean, I would say that generally 18 to 20% is pretty common, but I don't like to ever tell people how much to tip. I feel like that gets into this really weird argument. People get very uppity about how much you should or shouldn't tip people. All I'm gonna say is whatever you tip them, you should tip them because they are waiting on you. They are, you know, taking your order, bringing your food, checking in on you, sometimes going above and beyond. So you definitely should be tipping them, and they can accept tips. Other people who can accept tips are any sort of baggage handlers at the resorts. So if someone is grabbing your bags for you, bringing it up to the room, you can definitely give them a couple of dollars per bag. That's usually the standard, $2 to $3 per bag. You can also tip your Magical Express driver, and there is a sign in the bus that says that they accept tips. Generally, if you don't have a bag that's being stored underneath, it's okay to just take the bus and not tip them. But if they are helping to store luggage under the bus and pull it out for you, again, usually you want to tip them a couple of bucks for doing that for you. Transportation, you want to tip, but this only really counts for minivans because they are basically like a cab service, and most cabs you would tip. So you should also be tipping your minivan driver. But that said, you don't tip, you know, bus drivers or monorail drivers or boat drivers. It's just not something that is typically done, and I don't think that they can accept it anyway. So definitely tip your minivan driver if you use a minivan, and any cab drivers in general, whether it's just an Orlando cab or an Uber or whatever, but you don't have to tip the other transportation drivers. Of course, you should tip your housekeeping, or as they like to call it, mousekeeping. This can be a little tricky because sometimes you don't always get the same mousekeeper every single day. And a lot of people like to save their tip for the end of the stay, right? They'll say like, okay, we're gonna tip X amount of bucks for every day. I'm staying for 5 nights. I'll leave the lump sum at the end of the trip. That gets a little tricky because you can't guarantee that it's been the same person cleaning your room every single day. So what I like to do is just actually leave the tip every morning before I leave the room. Even though obviously it's a smaller sum per day, at least I know it's going to get to whoever cleaned my room that day. I don't want it to unfairly go to somebody who maybe was only cleaning on the last day, and now I left them, you know, a tip of however much, and they're taking the full thing. So I make sure to actually leave tip per day every single day, because you don't know what the schedules are, and you don't know who's working when, and you don't know who's cleaning your room every single day. Another place where you can tip is service-based, so spas. You definitely want to tip your masseuses if they did a fantastic job. You can tip, say, the boat driver if you go parasailing. Things like that, you can definitely bring a few extra bucks, or in the spa, you can even write it into what you're paying and tip them, because they are providing a service for you, usually for an extended period of time that, you know, it's just you and them. And so you should be tipping them for those things. So who can't receive a tip? I mean, basically everything else. You don't tip at quick service for the people who are just taking your order before you know, go grab your food. That's not really typical. You wouldn't tip, say, at, I don't know, Food and Wine Festival for the people who are like making the food and pouring your drinks. You can't really tip cast members in the parks. And again, you can, but like whether or not they can take it becomes a whole, you know, other thing. But we're talking, you know, anything from people merchandise to crowd control to janitorial. They really can't accept tips from people. They're not supposed to. So don't be offended if you do offer a tip and they say no, it's not you. They're not trying to insult you, but you know, it's just part of the rules of Disney. So you might be thinking, well, crap, like this one cast member did something really amazing and I just want them to know that I appreciate it. How do I do that? Well, the nice thing is Disney has a really great system for cast compliments in a couple of different ways. You can go to guest relations at the park that you're at and let them know that there was a cast member. Always good to note the name and where they were working. That was exceptional, and you can tell them your story. You can also write out a little card when you're there with the compliment. You can call Disney after you get back home and speak to a cast member and let them know that this cast member was extraordinary. You can write an email. There is an email to compliment. I'll put that in the description below. That also goes directly to whoever it needs to get to, managers and all of that. You can also now tweet. There's this thing they've been doing for the past couple of years. It's like hashtag cast compliment, I think, or cast member compliment. whatever it is, I'm gonna make sure I put it right here so I'm not steering you wrong. And you can tweet that at Disney World or WDW Today, and they will often pass that along. Not only pass it along, they've been printing out tweets and giving them to cast members and taking photos of them actually getting their compliments. So that's really, really special as well. And compliments actually go a really long way to help out a cast member, because this actually goes to their performance reviews that can essentially mean a promotion or getting a raise. Something that we had at the World of Disney, we used to have meetings every morning like powwows, and they would read out some of the best compliments that we got from guests in front of everybody, the whole team, which was really, really awesome. So if you really want to make a difference for a cast member, I would definitely say don't feel bad if they can't take some of your money, but if you give them a really good compliment, that could go a lot further for them. That's pretty much it for tipping in Disney. I'm sure there's like very specific roles that I haven't mentioned, and if you're confused about whether they should be tipped or not, you can ask me in the comments below. I promise you I will answer and let you know. I know that it's a little bit tricky because you can't tip everybody, and I know some people feel like that rule is a bit unfair. But either way, it is what it is. So hopefully that helps clear things up a little bit with tipping. If you like this video, then like it. If you like me, you should subscribe. I'm making videos every single week, and I love hanging out with you guys. Thank you so much for watching another video, and have a great rest of the day.